Aloha. Everybody got their video on again? We are beginning. All right. Welcome, all of you who are viewing from home and on Facebook. We have like kind of a sad topic, but an important topic this evening. Our cry is ino ino, aloha. You know, there's danger out there. There's harm coming to our lands in Honua'ula. And Honua'ula is a very special place that is our focus tonight. And we have here to share their stories of the land and share their ideas and hopes for the future. Some folks who have very, very different stories connected with this land. So my name is Lucienne Dine. I'm helping host this for the Sierra Club Maui. But this is an issue that really the Sierra Club is really standing on the sidelines to give kokua to those who are on the front line and speaking up for these lands and for a way of life and a culture to pass on to future generations. So I would like to start by welcoming our guests. First, Walter Riddy. Welcome, Walter. Can you tell us a little bit about your connection to these lands in Honua'ula and Koho'olawe?
Yes. Well, I was born on Maui, Punane Hospital. That's gone. Moved to Molokai when I was, third grade, and been here ever since. Got involved in many things here on Molokai. One of the things that we had to do was figure out how we're going to survive as young families back in the 60s and the 70s. And on Molokai, we had to figure out how we're going to survive and feed our families. And we couldn't do it without access. So for us, the first problem we had was how do we get to the ocean and how do we get to the deer and how do we get those things that's going to feed our families, because jobs was really hard to get. So that got us involved in many, many things. First of all, it was trying to get fish for the family. So we couldn't get to the beaches. So we organized ourselves as a community, and we were the first Hawaiian community to ever protest. And the protest was because we didn't have access to fishing grounds and hunting grounds. So because of that, we became well known. Nobody was doing other things except diving for quarters when the lurleen came in on Oahu, putting on a big smile no matter what was happening to you as a Hawaiian, just keep smiling and everything was going to be all right. So we became a protesting group, and that got us all kinds of media coverage. And we got a telephone from somebody from Maui named Charlie Maxwell, and he invited us to come with him to Kaho'olawe. So he invited all the Hawaiian groups that were active during that time. My job was to bring my rifle and hunt goats so that we could feed everybody while we did our occupation of Kaho'olawe. So that was something easy for me to get involved with. I had no idea what was going on Kaho'olawe. Nobody knew. It was a forbidden island and was only used for military target practice. Everybody knows that there were fires and bombs, and it was just a dangerous place to go. So we went to Kaho'olawe for the pure intention of supporting the voices from Maui that was being sent out by Charlie Maxwell. Little did we know that this island was going to affect our lives for the next 50 years. So one of the main things that got to me when I got to Kaho'olawe was the amount of historic sites that we began running into. And I saw big circles around the historic sites. And the circles meant that these were targets. So graduating from Kamehameha schools, I learned how to read and write. And they gave me the tools to survive out in the world. But they never taught me about my history. I knew nothing about myself as a Hawaiian. So, but I had the tools to survive. So going to Kaho'olawe was my first experience to actually see things that our kupuna left behind. We all know that the Hawaiians did not have a written language. So today we depend on some of the newspapers, the Hawaiian language newspapers for our history. But actually seeing what our kupuna left behind was so critical for us to understand who we were. And to see those treasures that was left by our kupuna being used as a target for bombing, it didn't sit well with me at all. I became very angry, a very angry Hawaiian, that they were bombing my library and I was not going to be able to learn about myself, my history, because they needed to practice not only how to bomb things, but how to kill people. So basically that's my whole involvement, and why I'm still involved. It was because of the realization that people were destroying the very things that connected me to my ancestors, so I could figure out who I am as a Hawaiian. So that was very important for me.
Wow. Well, an inspiring story. And we go from our oldest panelist to our youngest panelist. Are you there, Kalama'ihu? Would you like to share about your involvement to Honua'ula and the land?
Shucks, would it be okay if I think Carol, you go first? I think she's like also lineal descendant and like a kupuna, so I think I can go last if that's okay. If I wanted to go last, because
I was just
at least
dream, but thank you for reminding me on protocol. All right, Carol Lee, can we have your mana'o?
Mahalo nui e Kala'ehu. Mahalo Anakala for your awesome history and all that you have done for our lahui. I'd like to mahalo Sierra Club first for allowing this to be broadcasted. Mahalo Lucien for allowing our kupuna to have a voice. My involvement and the reason why I am here is because my kupuna resided in the area in the 1400s. Thank you to Lucien and to Inez Ashdown. Through their research, I was able to find that my kupuna Kauholanui Mahu was a chief from Moku'okeawe, and he married a princess, Chiefess Ne'ula, whose family resided and was from Honua'ula. So because of that, I filed my descendancy papers with Maui Lanai Island Burial Council and was accepted as a cultural descendant. So for all the projects that are coming about in the South Maui area, especially with LEDCOR and the 7 different projects that they have going right now, the H2 project in McKenna that is happening, the Wailea 670 project, and then of course the Grand Wailea renovation and expansion project, of which I am party to that contested case. My advocacy is for our iwi kupuna. They don't have a voice, so we must be their voice. We must say, Aole, stop desecrating our kupuna and stop desecrating and erasing who we are as Kanaka Maoli. Our history is being erased. Our identity is disappearing. So I am here to help ensure the perpetuation of who we are. And I mahalo everybody that gets into this va'a with us. It's not an easy paddle. It takes a special person to come forth for our kupuna. Not saying that I'm special, I'm just saying it's very emotional. And in all the areas that I have been traversing the aina of these different projects, it's been heart-wrenching, gut-wrenching for me to see what they are doing. We need to change the narrative that is being taught because it's not ours. So mahalo.
Mahalo, Carol Lee. Thank you for coming on. And I know this can be very, very emotional for you because you feel these things deeply. If Loretto wanted to say anything or offer anything, we understand if she stays shy, but if she'd like to, we'd love to hear your mana'o, Loretta, about the lands of Koho'olawe, about your involvement, about what drew you to be involved.
Aloha, everybody. Actually, because of Walter's involvement, you know, with Kaho'olawe, with Huialaloa here on Molokai, we began to realize that, well, I just remember in high school, like Walter said, I never knew who I really was. I mean, my mom was a hula dancer. I danced hula for most of my life. And so that was my connection to that part of who I was. But there was this unknown thing that is in all of our koko as Hawaiians, because we carry the koko of our kupuna, that kind of reminds us or lets us know things that we weren't taught or don't know. And that was a thing about the aina that, you know, my kupuna always told me there were things you couldn't do and there were things that you could do. But when it came to Kaho'olawe, I think for us, that was the first time through Walter that the island spoke to him. And the island came into him and told him that she was dying and that she needed to be saved. And so I think if we all had that mindset of knowing that the aina, like I look at those pictures and are they bombing those in Wailea?
Yes.
It's like, it's so hard to comprehend. It's like, how dare you? How dare you? Knowing that those are historic sites, how dare you? So the mindset is to be an activist and do what you have to do. But the kupuna, our kupuna from Molokai always told us, there was a phrase that we used during the times that we met with the military, and they always said they were doing it in defense of the country. And our kupuna, especially Auntie Mary, Auntie Clara Koo would say, kill them with aloha. So that's, you know, that's how we should be doing things. It's like, to me, I can relate to Mauna Kea and the sacredness of that place and how people just galvanized and gathered, because we're at a place in this time of our history that we're not standing for anymore. And we're going to do what it takes, whether we have to go and change the laws, talk to the politicians, And it takes commitment because you have to sacrifice, whether you're going to be every day sitting there at Pu'u, telling those people who come with their bombs and their machine, you cannot come here. This is our aina. And we're not going to allow you. They're going to come and arrest you, yeah, but then you got to be ready to send somebody else in, you know? So it just for me, it's like there's the young people have been to school, they know the history, and the next movement is to do these kinds of things that need attention now to protect the aina. And the ultimate goal is to get our kingdom back. Because our kupuna told us the Hawaiians can teach the world aloha and aloha aina.
What a vision. I hope we can keep this vision in mind as we progress through this little time we're allotted to cover this very, very important topic. And our last kupuna to introduce is Claire Pana. And if it hadn't been for Claire, who said, you know, this is like Koho'olawe. We should get everyone together and talk about it. Because it's like, hey, we can't just have this starting over again. You know, we've got to say aoli. And we need to hear from the folks that were there at the beginning. And so here we are. Welcome, Claire. Explain your connection to these lands of Honua'ula now.
Okay, thank you, Lucienne. Yes, this is a very activating situation. You know, I just saw Loretta for the first time speaking in a movie about Koho'olawe, and I listened to her words, and she was so touching, just as she is today. But it's too bad that we're saying the same thing 30 years later. I lie. What is going on here, right? Except for at the place that we're looking at where they're getting blasted, what is the reason? What is the reason? So that we can have more levels of housing, of places to build houses with views. So you want to have, say, 3 different levels, and you want to have a view on each level. And you need to blast out the blue rock. For us, that is our aina, right? That is our aina. Is this to make houses for all the people who are homeless, who need houses? Ole, this is for the people who probably buying this as their 4th or 5th house. Do they need this? Does our island need to give for that? You know, what is the reason for this? You know, it's as bad as becoming bombing practice for all the nations of the world. You know, I actually lived through that too, watching the bombs. And from Wailuku, the whole sky would be red. And the sound was so strong, it reverberated through the walls. And I mean, I'm sure everybody who was alive then to hear the bombing remembers what it sounded like. And it was so senseless. And what is this blasting coming now? It's so senseless. Is there a really good reason to do this? I mean, are they building a road that we need so that people will have emergency exit? No, ole, it's for swimming pool, infinity pools, and view planes. No. So I'm just going to say that my connection to this is, I tried not to be connected to this because I'm so busy, and I knew Carol Lee was going to be there, and Lucienne. I said, okay, they can handle it. And then about 3 weeks ago, I got called by their cultural specialist, Kainoa Hercagio, and he said, we've been asked to consult more. And do you think, you know, what do you think about and I said, you mean the blast site? You know, do you think that there's any harm? What do you think? And I said, you know, I don't know this project, but I am very concerned about what's under the ground. I am very concerned that this project has a shoreline management access permit, which means it's close enough to the ocean to make a difference. And what happens to the underground water flow, our springs and underground water flow that flow out to the ocean? You know, you can still smell limu out there. Kihei, you cannot smell limu. What happened there? And I know that there was a lot of blue rock and heavy destruction to build that. So I went on my journey to find out what was up about this. And as I'm talking to Kainoa Hirakajo for 10 minutes, all I can see is that hillside. It's a very steep hillside. If you drive down to Wailea Shopping Center, it's that steep hillside. And all I could see coming out of that hillside was this blackness, this darkness coming out and coming out and coming out for 10 minutes as he talked to me, you know, and I said, okay, gotta be there. And to me, that meant water, the mo'o, maybe burial caves. And that's what it meant to me. And so when we went on the land, we talked to Kai Markel very shortly, and he had spoken to the project team at length for 45 minutes about why it's not okay to be blasting sites and land, Aina. And we found out that some of the things that had been found on the land could possibly be connected with a kane ritual site, a ceremonial site. And if that is true, there is definitely water there, and there may be burials, but it is a sacred site. I don't know of one in that area. And but we didn't have time. I went on a site visit 2 days before they started blasting. And this was my consultation. I didn't get to see the whole project. I didn't get to see all the archaeology, but the archaeology, although in 1981, 31 features were found in a study. In 2004-5, there were only maybe about 5. And then they found like 9 more, but none of them are going to be saved because they're called inadvertent. When did we get inadvertent sacred sites? I don't know, but there's something going on here to take us off our land, take our rights away, and okay, now I'm involved. I'm going to do something about this. I called the fire chief. I called him. They said that they do not consider what is in the ground. I called the Army Corps. They said they do not consider what is underground. And for us, the mo'o is extremely important. And I think for all of the people on Maui, the mo'o is very important, how the water still flows to the ocean. So thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity.
Mahalo, Claire, and I'm glad you are involved because you bring a very unique perspective. Kalama Ehu, of course, hard to follow, but you're a hamana, you're a humble hamana. So easy, yeah?
I should have took that chance earlier, but that's okay. We here now. Aloha kako. My name is Kalama Ehu Takahashi, and I am just the newest guy here right now. So I just wanted to acknowledge all of the other kupuna, Anakala, Anake, Lucian, Carolee, Claire, and all of the other like lineal and cultural descendants that have been involved in these issues for a long-standing time. Actually, currently, I just finished up school at the UH Manoa, and I'm currently living between the Moko of Ka'anapali and Lahaina. So we stay a little bit right up the road, but my hana currently takes me down to the neighboring Ahupua of Palauea, in the Palauea Cultural Preserve. My role over there right now is actually the co-coordinator of multidisciplinary student internship under the Kekolike grant with the University of Hawaii Maui College Hawaiian Studies and Language Department. So we were contacted by Auntie Lucian guys and Claire, and Tikarama to just talk story today. And so, honestly, I'm over here as like a beneficiary, riding the ripples of so many of your guys' contributions to our lahu and our history. So I just wanted to express once again how humbled and truly privileged I am to be here, and to be in this space. And I hope that we hold this space well for those that couldn't join us today or those who are out there right now. So my sincerest aloha and aloha me ka ha'a ya o kopoloa. Mahalo nui.
Sorry, we had a question here in the house. So yeah. Well, welcome to you all. I'd like to pull up our slides and do a little introduction for those at home to this place, Honua'ula, that we're talking about. So I'm going to pull up our slides, share. Uh-oh, shoots, Rob, it's not showing up. Well, I guess it is. All right, our technical advisor is Rob Weltman, and Rob is a guy that knows how to make everything work. So Rob, can you tell me if you can see my slide there?
Yes, it looks good. You might want to make it
Small kind?
yeah, a little bit taller, more narrow.
Yeah, how's that?
There you go. Perfect.
That better? Okay. Well, tonight's theme, Ino Ino Loa, it's like we have this harm coming. What you're seeing here is a blasting path. This is what it looks like. They drill holes and they put little coverings in them, and they put sticks of ammonium nitrate in, and then they blast. So this is our first slide, and at our end slide, you'll see this going off. First of all, Honua'ula, if you have not heard of the moku of Honua'ula, it's all these places that you know and love. It's the island of Koho'olawe, it's Molokini, it's the communities in modern times called Wailea and Makena, Ulapalakua. This is a map, and most maps do not show that Honua'ula actually include the entire island of Koho'olawe, but Koho'olawe is part of Honua'ula, and that's a legendary part of the creation myth of the whole area. So Koho'olawe has had a very sad interlude from 1941 to 1990, where it was just considered fit to be a US military bombing target. And it was, studies were done, and it was just seen as this barren and empty place. And it had a history as a very sacred Hawaiian place, but it was pretty much almost forgotten. And I don't know, anyone ever explain to you guys, Walter, how it just got forgotten? But, you guys had to stand up and tell the story.
Well, we didn't know what we were getting into until we started walking the island and saw all of the historic sites. There was the sites all over the place. So we knew it was walking into a library.
Yeah.
And nobody has the right to destroy our history. So they're going to do it unless we do something about it.
Right. And it was this matter of history was just being defined out of existence. It was said, oh, there was nothing there. This one guy wrote a report and he just said, there's more sites in Oahu. I saw practically nothing there. So we don't know where he walked, but obviously he wasn't trying. This is the navigator's chair, I believe, yeah, from one of the top peaks of the island there.
Yeah, there's tremendous amount of information. I mean, we got very little left, so we can't allow any more destruction of what belongs to us as Hawaiians, our history and our culture. I mean, the answer is no. You can't blast anymore. That's ridiculous. So we can say that, and then when you say that, now you have to do something about it.
Yes, amen.
That's the hard part.
And
you need-
our effects are still going on. You know, the land is still hurting from that 50 years of abuse.
I think everybody's in the mood to stop this trend that's been going on for the last 100 years. You know, how much more are you going to take? How much more are you going to destroy before you're satisfied? And most of it is just because of money. I mean, it's purely economics that's destroying our history, just destroying our lands, destroying our water. And life is a lot more than just money. So it just sounds like this is going to have to be a huge battle again.
Well, we're old, but we're not going away.
Not going away, and you're not going to make money. That should be the message. I mean, you think you're going to make money on this, you're going to lose money on this. So get out while the getting out is good.
Well, moving on to the rest of Honua'ula, the destruction continued from 1972 on, and I witnessed some of this. I came here in 72 for the first time, and I camped on Palawea Beach, and I was awakened by the bombing of Koho'olawe, and I thought World War III had started because no one bothered to tell me, a Malahini from the mainland, that this was going to happen. I thought I was in paradise, and all of a sudden the ground was shaking, and I was scared. So all of these golf courses and luxury resorts, they were all built on a landscape that had to be changed in order to fit the Western model. And, you know, Kalamaehu really went into this when he did his dissertation, and it was so inspiring. The quotes you came up with from some of the kumu in just how one culture just replaces another culture. But that is the story of Honua'ula. The only lands that are now left pretty much unchanged, and this is an old picture, a lot of these lands down at the bottom are already developed, but are the lands of Wailea 670. And many people in this room have been fighting to preserve what we could on those lands for the last like 12, 13 years. But here's the way they do it. Hundreds of archaeological sites are found, and then they're defined as having no significance, and then they can just be wiped off the face of the earth. So that is the problem. So moving right fast forward here, Carol Lee mentioned this Canadian developer, Ledcor, and that they have 7 parcels that they have development rights for. They don't own all of them. I think they own maybe 2, but they have the right to seek further entitlements and try to develop. So only one is in the development process now. That's where the blue circle is here. The pink are the 7 parcels that are undeveloped. This is commonly known as Wailea Resort, but of course, if you're a Hawaiian, it's Paiahu. It's an ahupua'a that starts at Kilohana Drive and goes all the way kind of like a little bit before the Kealani Hotel. And it's a big ahupua'a and a very special place as we're learning, but we're just trying to learn faster than things are destroyed here in Paiahu. So this 13 acres, it has a name, MF7, but you know, what does that mean? It's a 13-acre parcel along a very amazing kahawai or natural stream gulch in Paiahu. But the new owners, the Canadian Ledcor folks, see it as the Wailea Hills, and it's 75 gated condos. As Claire said, they have to blast these sites so each one has a view. They have to blast places so there can be underground parking and storage. But they're inviting people to come here and live the spirit of Wailea. And they're saying, you know, you're going to be close with the land and close with the community. And this spirit will allow you access to the land. And we're combining the ancient beauty with the 21st century design. Well, all the ancient beauty is being, you know, pulverized and blasted, but that's the sales pitch here. What does the land really look like? Well, on the left is what it looked like before blasting and bulldozing started. You know, majestic slopes, beautiful views, kilo places, places that you would definitely want to watch: the ocean, the skies, the mountains, for the things that, you know, Hawaiians needed to know. And so all these areas were adapted by Kanaka of old. There are some carbon dates here. They date back to 1500, 1600s, I think 1600 to 1800 sort of time frame. And then there's the Kahavai. Now this circle is where the parcel is, the 13 acres. You can see this big old Kahavai comes right through it. This is a county map. But what the county map doesn't tell you, you have to piece together all this other information, is that actually where this came out was a mulivai, was a lagoon, was an area where young fishes could grow and fatten. And there might have even been actually a fish pond off of the little point of land, Ma'ahi Point. And all this is just kind of lost. But if you dig down, you find that there's a reference here and a reference there. This is on the right is what the Kahavai looks like. It's a beautiful blue, dense blue stone. And this is just to show you, this map's gotten a little dim, but this Kahavai, it goes all the way up to the mountain. This is it up here. It goes like 4,000 feet, you know, 3,000, 4,000 feet. It is not some little drainage channel. It is a magnificent cultural feature, but it's called a drainage in all the plans because, you know, you redefine things as being, you know, in the one nothing, and that's it. But it was shown in the 1950s as an intermittent stream. And that means it had enough flow that it was considered a stream. But now it's just considered a dry gulch.
There's
Now
there's no name for this.
Well, there probably is. We don't know it yet. It's called Kihei Gulch 2 on county maps. So that's not its real name.
Okay.
Yeah, but probably someone knows the name, Walter. And that's why we do things like this, that, you know, someone will have heard a family story and you'll put the two together. But there are some things that will be preserved along this gulch. I mean, this gulch is really magnificent, and it has this whole system of cave shelters, petroglyphs, and there is like a preserve that's supposed to be around 2 acres there. But if you track these things, you find out that before the zoning was changed in 1997, 98, it was actually 4.7 acres in open space. But that kind of got, you know, brushed aside. And so we have the 2 acres. We're grateful that something will remain, but it's not the whole library, as Walter would say. Here's another part of the preserved site. There's actually an area, besides the 4 cave shelters and a little C-shaped area, there's like a quarry where tools were being made. You know, chunks of basalt, the very hard basalt, were being chipped off and formed into tools for everything that Hawaiians did. You know, they used the tools to build canoes and to build hale and to shape, to cut the fiber for their nets and everything. You know, you had stone tools and shell tools and bone tools, and so this was a very important resource area. And then the sides of the basalt cliffs have petroglyphs on them, which show that people lived and you know, passed through here and left their story.
On Molokai, the tool makers, where all the adze quarries were, they were well-to-do people. They were very, very important. You know, without them, they couldn't make a lot of the things that they had to make, like canoes and stuff. So these adze quarries were like, they weren't like the maka'ainana. They were more like a different level.
Yeah.
They had the skills. I mean, making these stone tools took a lot of skill.
And that was an important person in a chief's, you know, retinue. The folks that gathered around an important chief. One of the very important people was the canoe builder and the tool maker, because you couldn't go to war do anything. You couldn't have, you know, spears. You couldn't have anything without these folks and their skills. You're right. They were the, you know, the white collar professionals of their time.
Right.
Highly skilled. Yeah. So as you have said, and as Carol Lee pointed out, there were other sites here on this land. There were at least 13 other documented sites besides the, you know, 7 features that were found in the Kahawai. But they have all just been, they've had their stones removed and the ground around them is just being destroyed. So it's like they're not seen as connected to anything. And yet, of course, through a Kanaka viewpoint, they're connected to everything else there. So it was just such a, you know, kind of, you know, cutting things in two, basically.
Lucian, if it's okay, I wonder if I can just a quick comment on that. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, please.
Just in terms of what was from just Manao, seeing how I think I've just seen the theme of like our pilina and like our understanding of these places being severed through these very like violent and like destructive practices that have like erased and and like nullified our mo'olelo, our histories, and therefore like some of our connections to these places. And so I think that the sort of erasure that happens over history through settler colonial processes in which the purpose is literally to take all of these resources, take all of the history and the communities and ohana that are connected to them and displace them from that area, which is sort of a history that is seen across Hawaii, particularly here in Honuaula as well. And so just fast forwarding a little bit through there, like once the landscape has been cleared of all of these mo'olelo and these history, that's when another logic of settler colonialism, which is subdivision, comes, and it begins to chop up this aina, which we see as not only our deified kupuna, but also as our well, actually as a legendary, as our ancestor, yeah, and just referring to like Papahana Moku, and any other sort of descendants that we as Hawaiians would identify as. Anyways, moving forward, yeah, so the subdivision of these parcels is what sort of like begins to even skew not only our pilina, but like our view of the connectivity between these sites. And so everything that goes, so in my opinion, everything that goes from a ko'i or an azkori to a pahale and stuff like that, these are all very intricate and valuable parts of our material culture that create the tapestry by which we understand our histories or understand our relationship to aina and stuff. And even just like the comments you guys are making about like the ko'i and stuff, the fact that it's a resource that has investment, use, and relevance to different strata of the Hawaiian society, from the ali'i to the kahuna and down to the basic use of the maka'ainana, really is an example of how these multiple histories and perspectives are personified in these sites and in these features. And I would hope that panels like this and the work that we continue to do helps to push for more towards connecting these sites, and then using like technical skills or theories such as that of like distributional archaeology, in which I can think about Kehawa Baru, and she writes about distributional archaeology as interpreting sites as a whole and interpreting the cultural landscape as holistic and interconnected, like we were saying earlier. And so just pushing for the continuity of these sites and then the multifaceted relevance that each of these things have as our vahi, as our vahi kupuna, as our vahi pana and stuff, are very important to this. And so, sorry, just wanted to offer that quick mana'o, but mahalo nui.
Well,
Hope that was
generation that needs this library to exist, because how are you going to have a culture if you know, acre by acre it's wiped out? I mean, I don't know how you feel about that, but I imagine that it's your generation that is really going to suffer more than ours. You know, our time will pass, but you folks are starting out with your families, and what are you going to pass on?
So I just wanted to add to what Kalama Ehu was saying, and mahalo for that, brother, mahalo for that. And that's why I think connectivity, as you talked about, Lucienne, that's why we have Uncle Walter and Auntie Loretta here, is that connectivity from what happened on Kaho'olawe with the bombing, and look at us 30 plus years later, and they're still bombing us. So the connectivity between what happened then and is what's happening now, why is it always us that have to prove? Why is it always us that has to show or litigate that these are important sites? They mean something. They're a part of who we are. They're a part of our history. Why do we always have to be the ones to litigate? That's what I don't understand. And that's the colonialism that Kalamaehu talks about. And the connectivity needs to be looked at, not parcel by parcel, but in its entirety, meaning the whole ahupua'a, the whole mokupuni, you know? All of that needs to be brought into play, because what they do is they piecemeal sites, lands, areas, parcels, so that when it comes to permitting, oh, there's no significance there, nothing of impact. You can go ahead and build, go do what you want to do. But it's not true, because I've been on a lot of those lands. I've seen a lot of different sites. I've felt kupuna. In the Wailea 670, which is Mauka of this project, I've seen 2 separate sites where our mo'o is, our mama mo'o is, on Wailea 670. One of them, Kalamaehu, you know, we showed it to you on your last visit with us, the Mo'o Ridge that they wanted to destroy. I advocated for that at the Burial Council, for them to please keep it. That's Mama Mo'o. There's Mo'olelo behind her. You need to understand the Mo'olelo. You need to understand what is happening. There's another site that I've not spoken about on Wailea 670, which is closer to Maui Meadows, and it's in the Kahawai. I've seen Mama Mo'o in there with her baby. She's carrying her baby and she's going through the Kahawai. That same Kahawai is the Kahawai that Lucien speaks about in this parcel that's being blasted. That's the only thing that's being preserved. That's the one that has the caves and all the petroglyphs. The connectivity between Wailea 670 and this project is the Kahawai, is Mama Mo'o. So when our planning department and when the public works department looks at these projects, they need to look at the connectivity of the whole ahupua'a, how each parcel is related to the next, not only on the side, but from the very Mauka to Makai concept.
Mahalo. Now, Carolee, I have to apologize because I didn't put up the picture of your special horse, Pohaku, because I wasn't sure if you'd get overwhelmed by it, but I did put up some pictures here. These are some of just the natural formations you find on this land. And I am intrigued by the Pohaku on the left that has the split in it. I was taught by my kupuna, by my kumu, who took me in as a malahini and said, you know, here, learn about these Hawaiian things, that you look for places that would align. And when you see like an opening like that, you look and see, what would you see through that opening? What would you see Mauka? What would you see Makai? And this is a very, very, very special Pohaku. It is not destroyed yet. It is still there. Of course, it is said to have no cultural meaning whatsoever. And I can't make up a story about it. I can just share what my kumu has told me to look for. And I'm not even Hawaiian. But this is just a little snapshot of what this land holds. And far in the distance is a ridge. You at home probably can barely see it. It's this little red arrow. And this ridge was so rich in cultural artifacts, you know, pieces of shell, pieces of coral, flakes from making tools and other things. And yet it's in the process of being destroyed. Only the natural rock formation is left there. And it was such a meaningful place. To me, it completely connected with the caves and the petroglyphs and the quarry. They were totally connected. But it was cleared for destruction as no longer significant.
You know, when we went to Kaho'olawe, I went just to go ahead and feed everybody. And I ended up being thrown in jail. So I think the idea of having people go to this site, you know, whether it's legal or illegal, I mean, we weren't legal when we went to Kaho'olawe. So if this site is calling, you know, a lot of times if you don't actually go there, the land won't grab you. But if you actually go there, it'll grab probably the least expected person and turn his life upside down. So maybe some visits to this site. If it's illegal, it's even better, you know, and cause some kind of a ruckus. And then try to get our county council to be involved. Maybe they could be arrested or something. I'm not sure. But I'm thinking that it'd be important for people to actually visit this place, and it'll mean different things to different people. But to me, it's a really good first step to try and protect and save this place.
It's quite a thought. This is just a picture I took on the site of pieces of coral in plain view. The one on the left is the size of my hand. And we were told, oh, well, that doesn't really have a lot of meaning, that we'd have all this coral just laying around. And I didn't dig for this. This was like laying in the mud in front of this site that had been disturbed by the bulldozer, this terrace that we saw in the distance.
Lucian, I want to say something about that. You know, we are very familiar with the archaeologist who in charge of this site. And I feel this was more of a ho'ailona, which means a sign. This archaeologist does not do sloppy work. And I think that sometimes, you know, you go to a site, you go to a place, and then one day you see something that is so significant that you never saw before and wonder where did it come from. So I kind of feel that these pieces were left for us to find on the you know, that very late days that we were going to the site before it was completely bulldozed over, for us to find, because the whole thought of having a connection possibly to Kane and a ceremonial site all came about within like 5 minutes. And to me, it is the ho'ailona, the sign to me that we must be so much more careful about, one, how our archaeology is allowed to be done. Two, about the water. This is about Kane and the waters of Kane. You know, we need to be so much more careful about that in this area. This is one of the last areas to be developed on Maui. You know, some of us thought it would never be developed. How could anybody put houses and apartments on this part of the island? So it really, to me, was more of a sign that pay attention and do the right thing here. So
that's really an interesting perspective, because this particular site, which I have been taken to this site for years, for many years, and it had thick trees growing around it where other things would be dead, and you know, it would be the drought of summer. So there's some water nearby to this particular site, and the fact that it might have had some sort of ceremonial connection to Kane and be involved with, you know, giving thanks for water. It kind of overlooks, it looks down on the Kahawai itself if you look to the north, but it's a mystery that I wish we had time to unravel instead of destroying these things before there's the time. I'm going to go back to that.
You know, Lucian, with regards to this coral that you're talking about, we need to also ask ourselves, what is it? What is the coral doing there? How far is it from the kai?
Half a
How
mile.
far
It's half,
is it? But how did it get to where it's at? It seems to be out of place, but why is it out of place? So that does bring into play the thought that we have, that we've been told there is a kaneheyao that's there, and the coral was utilized as ho'okupu to kane, especially because of the close proximity to the kahawai that you have right there, the pond that you're showing. We sat at that pond, and sitting at that pond and looking at the caves, all of that, you have to ask yourself. And I see in the chat, somebody was saying that they walked the Aina from Ulupalakua down. They've seen coral, they've seen caves, they've seen petroglyphs.
Hi, mahalo for that.
So how come none of that is being protected? If we, the lay people that don't have this palapala that tells that we are supposedly archaeologists, how come we, the lay people, can see it and they can't?
well, that's the key question here. It's like, how can people who are just out on the land seeing things have an impact? And I think Uncle Walter is right. You need to show up. I mean, it's the only thing that's ever worked. Whether you show up to the planning commission meeting, the county council meeting, you occupy the land, whatever it is. I mean, I was so inspired by the folks that showed up at the land use commission for La'au Point. I mean, that was a community that knew its story and told its story. And they had this body that hardly ever listens, to the public, just, woo, gosh, there's another story here and we didn't know it. And the applicant could see the handwriting on the wall and they just withdrew their EIS. They went, this isn't going to pass. The true story has been told. The truth is out. We're never going to get by. This is another picture of that pohaku with a split in it. When you look right through that pohaku, you're looking at this pond. It's very interesting. That's the Makai view from that pohaku. But was this particular pohaku some sort of a kilo stone? It's like, it's sad that we may just never know. So the other part of the story is just Makai of this 13 acres. There was also once a special island. And there's like a little rocky area remaining of it today. And it's listed on maps as Mokapu. But according to Inez Ashdown, and I think a couple other sources as well, that's just kind of a shortening of the longer name of Mo'okapu, or the Kapu Mo'o, back to what Carol Lee was referring to. So this island isn't shown in modern maps because it was bombed during World War II, just like Koho'olawe, and most of it disappeared. So the place name now goes to the beach. There's a public beach access. But up here in the circle is where our 13 acres is. The kahawai runs along here, comes out right here at this point. This is where the mulivai was, the lagoon that had fresh and brackish water and was, just a place of giving life for fish, for plants to grow, etc. And right offshore was Mokapu or Mo'okapu Island. But never a mention of this in any archaeological report. It's just nobody sees the obvious to try to put together the land with the kai with the the history. And this little island, this little moku, was actually famous for the native birds that live there. And I've seen islands like this in the South Pacific, in the Marquesas. They're bird islands, and they're very prized because when food is short on land, you can go and get bird's eggs, which are very nutritious and tasty. You just paddle out, or if the island's close enough, you swim out and You bring some sort of a little basket or ipu or something, and you gather the eggs and you take them back and you enjoy them, and you leave enough for there to be birds in the future. But of course, the island was bombed. So did the mo'o in the name of Mo'okapu connect it with some of the legendary mo'o that are associated with Honua'ula? Because there is at least one mo'o associated with Honua'ula. And is this named because it was a place where the mo'o would come, and it was part of the rounds? And did the mo'o inhabit any of the pools in the kahawai? I mean, these are all questions that Hawaiians would ask, would be very interested in probably. But will we ever know? The kahawai will be there, you know, it's not being destroyed, but will it ever regain its function? Will it ever be an intermittent stream again that flows portions of the year when it's rainy enough, you know, upslope? It's like there's so many questions here about this coast that most people just think of as a playland for the rich, and they're very, very exclusive gated condos. But you know, like you said, Kalama Ehu, it's like, you know, the colonizers have just come, wiped the state slate clean, put another layer of civilization on it and said, this is our history now, this is what's here. And the sad thing is that they haven't bothered to let the mo'olelo of the older history reemerge very much. So I think that's kind of up to us.
Yeah, actually, Lucian, if I could just make a quick comment on this stuff. Yeah, mahalo nui. Sorry, there's just so much that was being discussed and stuff like that. And I think that one thing to point out when we're looking at these sorts of the ways that if we have issues or we want to start looking at this stuff, like the first thing to do is look to the internet and get and look at some of the most accessible platforms where we see how these places are posited. Yeah, like for instance, the Malka development in the 13-acre parcel where these houses are slated to be built. It's like, you know, when you look at the site and you listen to look at the propaganda and really examine the narrative that they're putting there, there's no room for the native, there's no room for the Kanaka or our histories in these places. Yeah. And I think that's a direct effect of things like over militarism and military occupation of these areas, which have as some of the more like violent processes that have caused disruption and even trauma, like intergenerational trauma that we can all have a collective experience around in terms of explosive disruption of Aina and the destruction of cultural sites. Yeah, and then after that also, I think there's something that's connecting it to like to part of a current issue that Hawaii is facing right now is actually the influx of tourists, yeah, and like the way that the tourist industry is being forced upon us, and the way that other native communities, for instance, in Honua'ula, right? If we look at the overhead view, like they have I mean, the water comes from somewhere else, but you're seeing that the places that are getting allocated natural resources such as water and stuff like that are those that come to support the tourist industry, or those that come to support the settling of like salient tourists and like transplants over here. Yeah, and so I think it's good to critically examine some of the processes that are creating the stage for all of this to happen. And I would just want to assert that, like, you know, these things aren't, even despite these areas and these places being covered in this cement, or even in these narratives that promote the romanticization of these places and like taking us out of here, is like, you know, these stories are still present and stuff. Just referring to places like the Mokapu, like it's either Mokapu or even the Moku Kapu. Yeah, either way, it's like it has a relationship to how the broader Hawaiian society at the time was thinking. Yeah, because there's a lot of Ike Kupuna that is still embedded in these places, such as whether it's place names or it's even the small natural resources or indicators such as those of fresh water, which in Hawaiian thinking connects us to the mana'o of like the mo'o. Yeah, but the way that Kupuna used this imagery or posited the natural resources and their respective deities within our own mo'o kuaha just shows like this is a cultural and historical way of sort of connecting us to these places. So I just want to keep pushing that we find these mo'olelo that will reconnect us. And so thank you guys all for sharing this stuff, and I hope that we can move forward even in some of the other places. Sorry, I'm just going to keep talking, just come off if you need to, but I was thinking about like the role of archaeology that has in all this sort of stuff, or like the people that do the environmental surveys. Archaeology coming off as like a Western practice, which one that's deemed like very invasive and even destructive at times, yeah, which, correct me if I'm wrong, actually sparks a lot of the issues from the time of the Hawaiian Renaissance, specifically speaking of like Dana None Hall guys and their fight with Hui Alanui and Makena in that area to preserve the Makela Alanui. And then afterwards, jumping over to actually over here in the Moko of Ka'anapali and stuff to Honokahua, yeah, where archaeologists and stuff like that said that there might not have been a lot of there wasn't a lot of cultural significance and stuff like that, but when they began the excavations, they found over 1,000 sets of complete burials, yeah, iwi kupuna, which begins a whole nother push for the stewardship and management and our connection to cultural resources. I just was watching a presentation that was conducted by a collective, the Kaliokopa'akai collective, in which they outline the history of issues with cultural resource management and contract archaeology here in Hawaii. And I would just like to take the time to maybe we can get that document in the chat or something, but to endorse that report and to mahalo the Hulio Pa'a team and the Noho Papahui that are the back that help to facilitate and staff the backbone of this thing to really be fighting for proper Hawaiian archaeology and cultural resource management, or wahi kupuna stewardship as they place it now. I'm sorry, that was kind of all over the place, but just a few manao that I wanted to share from what was being shared earlier. So mahalo nui au.
That's exactly why you're on the panel, because you're the next generation going out to the internet, looking at things and prowling around. And you set up a website, yeah, to try to put all kinds of information about Palauea in one place. Is that like going?
That's correct. And actually, but just to share about it, it's palauea.com, PALAUEA.com. And this is the product that I had created for my my recent master's plan B thesis, which whose aim was to collect regional cultural historical stories in the Honua'ula region and then place them and then have them in an online repository for community to access to begin this type of research that will help us to reclaim our stories and our wahi. And then I shared that URL in the chat really easy. And then I also have access to that report that I was referencing earlier. And so I will be adding that in the chat as well. If not, I can put the URL for that site as well.
Great. And Claire, do you want to weigh in on Mo'okapu Island?
Oh, I think that it is just amazing to have that history, that you found the history there, and now it's gone. And this my work with and fascination with mo'o really came out of a contact and with a teacher and a mo'o, and but in a context of just common sense, you can see how important it is to have the flow of water, but yet we just keep continuously giving it up, just giving it up. It's kind of interesting. Carol Lee is working on the What Up plan, but we keep giving up our rights to have a healthy flow of water, clean water. We keep giving it up, like whenever I testify, I always testify for something on South Maui. I said, I don't give you my permission to take the water out of my ahupua'a to bring down here to South Maui for the purpose of people who have second and third houses, tourism. This is not for the living of our people. And I say no. I say no. And I think that the fact that this beautiful special island is now gone tells us a lot about not caring enough to stop the onslaught of development. Kalamaehu, I see your generation with many good words and good constructs, you know, really great constructs of how to put it into context of what has happened to our Hawaiian people, to the colonialism, to the militarization. But when do we get the boots on the ground, right? when do the boots hit the ground, and what will that look like? Perhaps in your generation it will look different. For Walter guys, they had to go sneak onto an island that's being bombed already, and so what will that really look like for all of us? You know, one of the things that we try to do when we do one of these live stream panels is to have people have something to do. How can you make this situation better? And there are many. I think that blasting ordinance has got to go or be tremendously changed to reflect the fact that you are blasting Aina, and what is the destructive forces and what is the effect. But second of all, I think we've all kind of talked about how much it affects us to see the Aina blasted. But I wonder sometimes how much other people really understand what it means to feel the loss of the land, the loss of the connection, and know that we could be making better connections in places. You know, in this one place, Paiahu, with all the different lots and projects that could come up, we could be making better connections. But you know, we are a few voices. Where are all the voices of all the people who got to come here and live in this beautiful place, in this beautiful South Maui? Where are your voices to say, yes, we must keep this connectivity. We must keep this for the people who first lived here, whose culture this is. I would hope to hear that you even understand what it means when we say it hurts for us to see that bombing going on, because it's like they're bombing us and who we are. So thank you, Lucienne.
Well, this one brings a lot up, you know, it's like, here's a big clue, an island whose name says Mo'o Kapu. And you have a major kahawai coming down. So did this Mo'o, was it associated with the kahawai? You know, we need to know. Anyone else want to chime in on this theme? And we're virtually at the end of our slides. We have 2 more.
If I could just make a quick comment just to answer Auntie Claire. I think that in terms of like the future generation and stuff like that, I think as part of the younger generation, I think that education is really the key. I think that I think even if we have different experiences and throughout different times within our history, I think that's the one thing that we can agree upon is that education and learning, even whether it's as we go or as we're reading books or as we're just being out on the Aina at some point or another. I think that that's the most valuable part is just finding out ways to educate either ourselves or maybe even to share with each other, creating those avenues to get this word out. Yeah, because I mean, you got to think about it. The history of this destruction and all these other things is potentially being spread at a much faster rate than the actual true histories of our people and what we're up to. And so I hope that everybody watching this and listening will just take the time to, I don't know, just not educate anybody or this kind, but like, you know, I think I would just want to say that, sorry, I digress, but I think education is the key. So taking the time to even just learn a different place name, or to even just like, you know, see what direction we are, or some of this, if you can dig deeper, have a little bit research expertise and or whatever you have. But just try to cool the next generation. Just help us. Like as we can see, I'm talking right now. Like I need help too, so help educate me at some point or another. But just cool each other too. But sorry, that just got off track. But mahalo nui.
To echo the sentiments of what Claire and Kalamaehu just said, it does come down to education, but I don't know if it's more education than it is awareness. We all have our lives. We are all busy. We all have our families, our jobs, whatever the case may be that gets us through this circle of life. And having webinars like this and making it known, that this is what's happening around you. If you don't like it, get involved. Speak to the people that are putting this on for you so that you know what's going on in your community. We so mahalo Uncle Walter and Auntie Loretta for their stance all these years, for standing up for who we are as a people, for our lahui. That's Uncle Walter and Auntie Loretta's name are synonymous with ku'e. Yeah, they're synonymous with activism. They're synonymous with standing up for who we are. So Kalamaehu and your generation, I plead you all to please search out the kupuna. Those that have the mo'alelos, tape them. Utilize that as oral testimonies. Yeah, find whatever you can and document all of this, because this definitely is not what's going to be taught in the schools, because this narrative that we bring forward does not benefit the Western society. So mahalo for that.
Do they have to have public notice when they're gonna do blasting?
Only to people who live within 500 feet. So once those notices went out, our phone was ringing off the hook. They were contacting Claire, contacting me, contacting anybody who's active, and saying what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah, so if there's like a date for the blast, that's when people should go there.
Well, it's already started. It started about a week ago, and it may go all of August. It may just start again at the end of August. We're not sure. They
but-
did quite a bit of blasting this week.
Don't they have like a day that they said we're gonna blast at a
Yeah, they
certain
know.
hour on a
Probably,
certain day?
probably there is. We'd have to kind of be in touch, but
Yeah.
our club cannot advocate for people to get arrested or break the law.
That's
That
time to go have lunch over there.
it's like folks could certainly sit on the sidelines where it would not be illegal. We'll have to see what happens. I'm going to just play our last two slides here, and let's see. Oh, huh. Go. Well, this is a blasting path you saw in the beginning, and this is one of the pohaku that are one of those unusual pohaku that are there. They're very beautiful. They don't have necessarily a cultural modification, but they just call to you for their natural beauty. And who knows, 300 years ago, 400 years ago, they might have also been utilized by people, but the stories have not been left behind. And this is the blasting yesterday. There's very little left. There's just a little bit of a hillside, and this orange fencing here is the preserve area. So on the north side of that would be preserved, and this is one little natural hillside here, and there's another little natural hillside on the north side. But these are very large blasts. 2 large ones went off today too. So I mean, it is dangerous being there when they're blasting, I would imagine. I would like to segue in our last little 10 minutes that we have left in. So how do we improve things? I mean, do we need new laws? Do we need to change how the historic review process starts. What is the function?
I still have a car there. in the past.
Yeah, this I guess is I guess Rob put up the live video, so you sort of see the smoke. Yeah, this is yesterday. That smoke can't be that healthy for our reefs either. You know, it has all the little particles in it. But so, folks, ideas. What could
So did you say, I'm sorry, Lucian, did you say that Kainoa Hokajo was the consultant for LitCorp?
He's a
Yeah,
cultural consultant.
on? Yeah, as the consultant for cultural outreach. Yeah.
For the lead core developments. He's led core's cultural consultant, cultural advisor on
Okay.
all their projects.
So he needs to be talked to then.
All right. Lucian, unless somebody else has more to say, I think on a very positive note, I was trying to talk Kalama Ehu into this earlier, but I think that something he's doing is so important to our future as Kanaka people and as people who live on these islands. And that is, I was very glad to be part of a field visit that he had brought his students to. And I was very, very taken by the class and what they were learning in their class. I just wonder if you might share that with us, Kalamehu. You know, it's really good to balance the eha with the hope and the things that people are doing that are so good. So if you don't mind, I really believe in what you're doing.
Okay. Just so what we're doing over there is that actually we have a very small group of interns, and then the time that she's talking to two right now, it's actually under the Kekoliki grant at the University of Hawaii Manoa. At Maui College, but we had an opportunity to visit with Auntie Claire and then Coco Nemeth from that area. They're doing work down in Waiahulikai at Aina Kukoa. I just wanted to take the time to just posit that I'm still relatively very new to this area and stuff like that, and so I started planning to learn. So like Kalame, if anything that I've put out there might not have been like polole or anything like that at this time. So I take that. Just wanted to offer my humble apology on all of that, but we're doing our best to sort of do educational programming with what we can and what sort of Ikeda has been sort of collected to research in the Hawaiian Nupepa, or even other stuff through like Mahele documents and other historical stuff like government survey maps and stuff. And so we're just using these resources as an opportunity to just show some other up and coming transfer related students from the Maui County to just get like a professional experience during their time in the college and stuff. Yeah.
Mahalo for that, Kalama Ehu. Lucian, I just wanted to chime in with regards to the question that you asked. What can we do? What's needed? This is something that we've all advocated for those of us that are in this fight, for the protection of our iwi kupuna, is basically start with the archaeologists and the archaeology firms that do all this work. There's no standards, Kopai Aina, for archaeologists at all. No standards whatsoever. You can go on the Aina, do OJT for a certain amount of time from somebody who doesn't know what it is, nor do they have a degree. And then all of a sudden you're an archaeologist. We need the planning department and the Department of Public Works to not rubber stamp permits. We need for them to go on the Aina. If that's not a possibility, then I know for county properties, they're going to start requiring purchases to go through the county archaeologist with the program she has at High Crest that shows different sites and different things through that program that would be very useful when it comes to development. But I think that's something that should be required for all development. Kopai Aina is to include our county archaeologist in that program that she has that allows her to zero in on anomalies, on sites, a lot of different things. I mean, I don't want to talk about it because I don't really have that much knowledge about it, just a little bit from what she's shared with us. But, you know, just stuff like that, that I think we need to start with in order to try and help protect what little left we have of our historical and cultural sites. And then, of course, all the effects to our natural resources.
You know, this thing about what gets me is the blasting. We finally started to get used to bulldozers, and we used to attack the bulldozers. But this blasting thing is getting out of hand. I mean, how about those guys like Kalekoa and those guys? Do they know what's going on? Lucian?
Good question. I mean, it's been out on social media. This is a project that got approved in 2008. So it's like, you know, a lot of times if things are approved and then you know something terrible is going to happen, everyone's been tracking them and they swing into gear and they get involved. But this, it's like it just went dormant and they had to keep getting their permits renewed and no one knew when it was going to start and no one knew really what they were going to do. You'd have to go and dig up all their old plans. They didn't have to do an environmental impact statement or anything. There was no trigger for it. There was just like an SMA thing. So it's like, I think people have been in the dark and then all of a sudden these blasting notices came out in May. And this is when I started getting people complaining about it. I knew it was going to be developed. I read reports from the 80s that described the land. So I knew it was proposed for some sort of housing. But
to me, that's the Achilles heel for these guys is the blasting. I mean, it's not like everyday stuff that you just go around blasting hillsides to put your houses. Yeah. So I think to me, that's what you go after that first. And then that's like the first attack point is to stop the blasting because you cannot blast if people are around.
They're very carefully controlling it. You can see they have, water sprayers there, and they got a permit from the fire department. But I think the fire chief told Claire that he had not ever given a permit before. He was relative. So
you contact Kalekoa and Kalama's got some stuff, that he's put together, the history or stuff on his, I don't know if it's a website or Facebook or something. That'll get them more interested or some background. But to me, that's the first thing I would try and stop is the blasting. I mean, it's so in your face. I mean, now you're blasting our culture again. Those days of Kaho'olawe is just staring you right back in the face again. And we spent our whole life stopping them from blasting the island. And now they're blasting where everybody's living. That's like shoving it right in your face. Anyway, that really gets me upset. And I really like, that's the first thing I would do is camp out right where they're blasting.
Well, I have to say, just personally, these lands, I'm not an engineer, but it seems like these last 7 parcels were undeveloped because they have tricky terrain. They have steep slopes, very, very rocky terrain, not a lot of dirt, more rock than dirt, thin covering of dirt over the rocks. And so if you're going to want to cram a lot of units on them, lead cores, all their projects, they're within the zoning perimeters, but they're kind of cramped. And then you have to blast to make everything fit. You're not just going to, go with the natural slope, but they have all three projects. They have really steeply sloped areas.
Well, they got to stop developing then, because you're not going to blast anymore. To me, that's the message.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you can fool around with our rivers and fool around with our beaches and all of that, but you're not going to blast our land.
That's the line in the sand. Well, we're at our 8 o'clock hour, and we had people that we were going to go from 6:30 to 8. Those are good last words for you, Uncle Walter. Any last words from any of our other panelists? You've all really had a lot to share and add. It's a lively group here. No closing words. Take it away.
I'll make some calls and see how it goes.
So yeah, we'll do some calls to people.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I would like to invite all of the communities, people who live in the communities near there are quite lucky to live in such a beautiful part of the island that frankly was probably never supposed to be developed. So I think that this should be a community effort. And of course, our Kanaka are most deeply affected. So, hi, Imua, as you say, Uncle Walter. Imua.
I thought I saw a road right where they're blasting. You just have
Right
all the
below.
cars just parked all along that road
Yeah.
and come by the fence and stick your head over the fence or something.
Oh, I'm sure there's a way, Walter. Well, we'll have to be in touch. And mahalo to Loretta and Walter Riddy. Mahalo to Kalama Ehu, Takahashi, Carolee Kamikona, and Claire Pana, and Rob Weltman for keeping all of our electrons in the right area. And mahalo to all of you who've written in on Facebook. Your messages have been transferred to the chat on Zoom because it's too crazy to be on both at one time. I did ask Rob if he would just post my cell phone number if folks just want to text about information they have about other cultural sites that they know of that could be, part of the big picture here. It would be great. And just mahalo for all of the great thoughts that were shared tonight. And I'm with Claire. I think that there is some bright light on the future because now we know what we don't want. So there's 6 more projects that maybe will never be blasted. That would be a very good outcome. Good night to everyone at home. Mahalo for listening. We will see you on the.
Are they still on?
And if possible, just to let everybody know, just mahalo real fast, but I put an email in the chat, alpalawea.gmail.com. I'd like to, if possible, just get feedback on just the manao that were shared and some of the mo'olelo that were being discussed this evening for the community input. So that's apalauea@gmail.com. Just to talk story and just to open up a line of communication with the community, maybe other linear or cultural descendants that might have manao about this evening. So mahalo nui ya oko, mahalo nui everyone.
Kalama,
yeah.
can you give me that APA what?
Yes, Auntie. It's I'm gonna put them in the chat. It's apalauea@gmail.com.
Okay. Mahalo nui.
Mahalo, you guys.
Yeah, and if you want to, Kalama Ihu, you can just go to the Sierra Club Facebook page, Sierra Club Maui Facebook, And there will be, you know, the page will be there and you can post stuff there too, because the people who are watching at home were watching on Facebook. So only the 7 of us were on Zoom. So no one else sees our Zoom chat except us. Is that confusing enough? Okay, very good.
There we are.
Yeah. Well, are we shutting down here, Rob?